In today's episode, I chat with the lovely and very funny Katie, and she takes us through her pregnancy for her baby boy Alexander and his birth as well. And so what she takes us through initially is finding very early on that she was pregnant, being very excited, doing a lot of research, getting as much information as she could, and getting a referral very early on to her local MGP program at her local hospital, and despite all of that, still missing out on being part of the MGP. So Katie ended up doing GP Shed Care, and she says that she really felt like she fell through the cracks. So Katie was really lucky in that her mom is a GP and she had midwives in her family, so she was able to get a little bit more insight and ask some questions to those family members. But other than that, she really felt like her GP could only help her up until a certain point. Even before she conceived Alexander, Katie takes us through the fact that she has always experienced pain with intercourse, and this was the case during Alexander's conception, and she felt very lucky that his conception was very quick. So during her pregnancy, Katie saw a pelvic health physio to try and help with relaxing her hypertonic pelvic floor and preparing it for birth. She also takes us through the fact that this baby was very much desired and she loved her baby, but she didn't like being pregnant and she experienced a lot of aches and pains. And on top of having a hypertonic pelvic floor, she also experienced urinary incontinence. And that was another reason why Katie sought the help from a women's health physio, because she knew that there was something that she could do about it. And this is what she worked on during her pregnancy and then during her postpartum period as well. And then finally, Katie describes her very long and very exhausting labor. What it really highlighted was the importance of your environment and the importance and the role that some pressures can play on your mind and how that can lead to labor being on and off or labor being stalled. And so in Katie's case, you will hear how there was a lot of pressure from the hospital to speed up the labor, basically get induced, and this was against Katie's birth preferences, and she did everything she could to stand in her ground, and she had the help of her very supportive husband and also her doula, who really helped her to stay grounded and try and get the oxytocin flowing. And I will not spoil what happened next, and then I will leave you to listen to Katie's incredible birth story and amazing postpartum that she then had. I hope you will love this episode as much as I did. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you so much, Katie, for sharing this story with us. You are listening to Cuppa with a Doula. I'm your host, Alicia, exercise physiologist and doula, and every week I chat with a mom or mom-to-be about all things pregnancy, birth, and parenting. The stories you will hear in this podcast are real and sometimes raw, but they are all told without any taboo. So grab yourself a cuppa, put your earphones in, relax, and enjoy this episode. Hi, Katie.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming on the
Hi.
podcast again, because we had recording issues.
Technology. No, it's my pleasure. Happy to be a guest.
Thank you so much. So, Katie, start by introducing yourself. So, telling the listeners your name, where you're living, and who is in your family.
Sure. My name is Katie Gallagher. I live in Wollongong in New South Wales, and in my family there is my husband, my 16-month-old son Alexander, and our 2 Labradors, Ruby and Luna.
Oh, that's amazing. What's your husband's name?
Oh yes, that would help. His name is Joe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've mentioned everyone else, but
It makes it easier for storytelling to be able to say Joe instead of my husband every time.
Yeah.
So yes.
because I know that there's quite a good story coming up. with the announcement of
Yes.
your pregnancy. So,
That's right. That's right.
so let's start with traditional question I ask all my guests. Did you always want to be a mom?
Yes, I always wanted to be a mum. I have loved babies my whole life, and everybody in my family was pretty baby mad. My mum and my stepdad both absolutely loved babies and kids. And I have two younger siblings that are quite a few years younger than me. So my sister Amelia is 6 years younger than me, and my brother Sam is 10.5 years younger than me. So I remember very clearly what it was like when Sam was a little bubba and a toddler, and I couldn't get enough of him. I just thought he was the cutest thing in the world, and always really looked forward to having a child of my own one day.
Oh, that's so cute. Wow, that's amazing. And so
Yeah.
that's funny because your mom had you and you were going to school at about 6.
I know. I might take my hat off to my mum because I don't know how she's managed all throughout our lives. We've all been at different stages. So I was starting school. My sister was a newborn. Then I was in high school. My sister was just starting primary school. My brother was a toddler. And then, I was in uni. My sister was in high school. My brother was in primary school. And, now I'm married with a child. My sister's just finished her uni degree and is starting full-time work. And my brother has just finished high school and is, navigating young adulthood. So she's always had a child at each stage of life that she's had to juggle. So she's done very well. She's had to be across everything, and we've kept her on her toes. That's for sure. But she's a great mum, and she had a lot of troubles falling pregnant with my sister. Was a bit of a honeymoon surprise, and then it took quite a few years to conceive my brother. So that's sort of why we're so spaced apart. But it works well. We're all really close, and my brother, he spent his schoolies with me. He finished year 12 and came down to Wollongong because he lives in Queensland to celebrate with me, which I thought was so sweet. But totally different wavelengths. I mean, I don't know how to use TikTok, and he's all over the socials and so up to date. Can't understand half the slang he uses. Totally different generations, but we love each other dearly and we get on great. He spent his schoolies, as in his post-school celebration, with me at my house. So, he didn't go to the Gold Coast schoolies or anything. He just came for a holiday with me instead. Yeah, that's right. He loves Alex. He also loves babies. He's really sweet, but he was like, did a little bit of looking after Alex, and he was like, not ready for kids for a while yet.
To you, so we're up to you, basically falling pregnant. So was it something
Yes.
you both discussed with Joe, your husband, that you both wanted to have kids at some point?
Yeah, definitely. We both wanted to have kids. It was just a matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
And the big thing for Joe was that he really wanted to make sure we had bought a house first before we fell pregnant. So we did. We bought a house, and then in January 2021, it was New Year's Day, and we were, chatting about our plans for the year, and I brought up the whole, maybe having a baby thing. I'd been keen for a while, and he said, well, I guess there's no reason why we can't, but he was a bit unsure, and I said, great, excellent, green light, we'll go for it then. And I had been off contraception for a couple of months by that stage. So, we weren't even really officially trying. It was just sort of like, well, we'll see what happens. And I had only had one period since coming off birth control, so I didn't even know if my cycle was regular or what. I didn't know when I was ovulating. I couldn't tell anything. So, that was that. And then, a couple of weeks later, Joe was like, oh, actually, you know what? I'm thinking maybe I just need a few more months. I don't think I'm ready quite yet. Can we maybe start trying in April? And I said, sure, that's fine. So yes, that was that. And then I found out that, I actually fell pregnant in January. So it was too late, and he got thrown in the deep end.
Wow. So, what was his, I guess, reasoning behind waiting? Was it he needed to mentally feel ready? Was it that for him?
Yeah, he wanted to mentally feel ready. He just was really nervous about taking the plunge and all the responsibility that comes with parenthood, and the change of our relationship. And he just, he didn't have as much experience with babies and kids as me either, I guess. So he was just a little bit more nervous, and I was going gung-ho with the research, emailing obstetricians, listening to Australian birth stories, doing all of the research, and he just got really scared. He was like, whoa, back it up. Like, you're going too hard. I need more time. But yeah, you didn't get more time, so.
Oh, wow. So, well, actually, take us through how you found out you were pregnant and how you broke the news to him, actually.
Sure, I love this story. So I, it had been about a month, so my period was due. If assuming it was regular, it had been like a month since I had that one period, and I had, really bad period pain, and my breasts were feeling tender, and I was feeling bloated, and all of the things. And I was like, oh, all right, so. PMS symptoms. And Joe actually said, yes, not pregnant, you're getting your period. And I said, yeah, I guess so, oh well. And, but the pain just lingered and lingered, and I didn't have, the period never came, and I was thinking, I don't know what's going on here. And the pain was actually quite, bad. Like, it was, kind of severe period cramps kind of thing. And I thought, it was hard to get through my day-to-day things sometimes because it was really quite painful. So after, it had been, I don't know, quite a few days of having this pain and, other signs of a period, I thought, well, I should probably go to the GP and just get checked out, make sure I don't have a tumour or endometriosis or something more serious. It did not occur to me that I could be pregnant, but I thought, well, I should just take a pregnancy test as a precaution before I go, because no doubt they'll ask me if I'm pregnant. So I took a pregnancy test, and it came up positive instantly, and I just nearly fell off the toilet. I was so surprised. I was so shocked because, I thought we weren't even really trying, and I just did not think that was going to happen. And my sister was staying with us at the time, and I ran upstairs and showed her the pregnancy test, and she was like, are you pregnant? And I was like, well, that's what it says, so I guess so. I'm like, what do we do now? And then I called my mum, who's a GP, and she was shocked as well. And then I booked a GP appointment at the local GP, went there, got the blood test and everything. And that day my sister and I had arranged to get our eyelashes done, and part of the agreement was that you weren't supposed to get eyelash extensions if you were pregnant, but turns out they meant just the later stages of pregnancy. But I thought, full disclosure, I found out that I was pregnant today. So I told them that I was pregnant, and my husband still didn't know at this point, and the lash technician knew, and my sister knew, and my mum knew, and it felt like the whole world knew. And yes, so that afternoon he came back from a really busy day of work. The dog had escaped. He'd gone out to round up the dog. He was all flustered, and I just kind of walked into the kitchen and handed him the pregnancy test, and he didn't believe me, and he was like, it's a prank, and he just pushed it to the side and kept going on with his business. And I was like, what do you mean? It's not a prank. I'm pregnant. And he didn't believe me until the doctor called up with my blood test results, and then he just sat there kind of stunned for a while.
That's crazy.
He was happy, but he was just couldn't believe it. He was so shocked. So it was pretty funny, but it was really special. It was and it was lovely that my sister could be there as well.
Oh, that's such a funny story that your husband thought it was a prank. As if you would prank him. I mean, some people do.
As if I would prank him. I know. I was like, what do you mean? We were talking about having a baby. I've been off contraception. contraception and now I'm pregnant. It's not the most outrageous thing in the world. That is how it happens.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not like, I don't know, like you were using contraception and so therefore you're like, wow, I don't even know, when that happened or anything. It's like, no, you kind of know how babies are made and, it takes two people.
That's right. I think the surprising part was that there weren't many opportunities really at all. So it was kind of a bit of a one-hit wonder, Alex's conception. So we were very blessed.
Yeah, but see, that's literally all it takes. Like sometimes, you time it well, without knowing. Because as you said, you didn't know about your ovulation. You didn't know about that and you didn't track it.
No.
And it just happened.
No.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was meant to be.
Yes. How did you feel? So you really wanted to be a mom and you got pregnant first go. How did you feel about that?
I was really excited, although to begin with I was quite anxious because I was having a lot of this pain, and my first thought was that perhaps I was about to miscarry or it may have been an ectopic pregnancy. So I was really torn. I was so happy and excited, and didn't want to be too excited in case I was going to lose the baby. So that was a hard thing to kind of hold both those emotions at the same time. And I had some scans and ended up at the ED because the pain got really, really bad, woke me up in the middle of the night, and I, was almost passed out. It was really awful. And it turned out it was a cyst on my ovary that was causing all of the pain, and the hormones and pregnancy had caused this cyst, and the pain I felt when I went to the hospital was the cyst rupturing, and then I was fine after that, and it all went away. And that hospital trip confirmed that baby. I did a scan; they could see baby in the uterus, so that was a relief to know it wasn't an ectopic pregnancy. And things kind of went on fairly smoothly from there. So yes, once I knew that baby was there and baby was okay, I was so excited. I think I bought our pram when I was maybe 8 weeks pregnant. I'd just started getting all the baby supplies. I was still listening to all the podcasts. I booked a doula at 7 weeks. I was like, yes, let's do this. I was so excited.
That's amazing, Katie. That is so amazing. You're just like, I need to do it all, and I need to do it all right now. I mean, you've got 9 months. Yeah. But why not do it now,
I know. Exactly. And, friends of mine that have been pregnant, they sort of, don't set up the nurse, don't buy their furniture and stuff till later, or they don't want to get too much in the first 12 weeks in case things, don't go as planned. And I did have that concern, but I thought, well, we're going to try again. If we lose this bub, we would definitely be hoping to try for another baby at some point. So why not get the pram now? If it's not for this baby, it'll be for the baby to come. But fortunately, there weren't any issues, and the pram is getting used right now on a walk.
Oh, amazing. And see, there's no timing for getting that type of thing. It's whatever makes sense to you and whatever makes you feel, ready and prepared, and like, you're getting the things, that you need or that you want, if that's what you need to do, then that makes sense, that makes sense for you. That's amazing. So you had researched, a lot around pregnancy and model of cares, and you'd emailed obstetricians. What model of care did you end up going with?
So my first preference was midwifery group practice, and as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I was at the GP getting the referral for that, and so it was probably about 4 weeks pregnant, I think. Certainly no more than 5, between 4 and 5 weeks. I sent all of that off. And unfortunately, I was unsuccessful because they didn't have enough room. And I couldn't believe it. I thought I was so organised getting booked in early, but they didn't have enough spots. So I ended up doing GP shared care. And and look, mixed feelings about that. I had a lovely GP. I found I kind of slipped through the cracks. It was really hard. It was so much lack of communication between the GP and the hospital, and the hospital would tell me one thing and then the GP would be confused, and then she'd send me with my referral for something and then the hospital wouldn't understand, or and yeah, it just really felt like I had to chase everything up myself, and all the appointments, I had to book myself, and I was always so confused about what appointment I had to go to when. And fortunately I had my GP mum and a cousin who's a midwife, and honestly I think the two of them were probably more helpful for me in my pregnancy journey than some of the health practitioners I saw externally, just because it was just so messy.
Oh wow. And see, I think your experience is quite common, like as you said, falling through the cracks, and just it's hard to communicate, your GP trying to communicate things to you that the hospital wants. So, trying to include them in the communication. It's pretty much a three-way communication in a way. That just gets messy, and it's such a shame that midwifery group practice isn't funded enough that it's accessible to everyone who wants it, right? Or everyone who meets the criteria, let's say. And it's such a shame because, I feel like when you do GP shared care, unless you know what you're in for, and you kind of know that you need to have, those specific appointments at, specific weeks, and, this is kind of what happens if you're totally new to this and you've got no idea, then it just makes it so hard, because then, what happens if, I don't know, like your GP gives you the referral for the 20-week scan, for example, but then the midwife, I don't know, doesn't follow it up or something. And so therefore you kind of like, well, who do I ask about, the results? How do I know if my baby's okay? It's, wow. That's really sad.
It was very much like that. It wasn't kind of anyone's fault in particular, and nobody treated me poorly, but it was just, there was just so much confusion all the time. And as a first-time mum, I was sort of like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing, and it felt a bit overwhelming, having to try and keep track of it all, and but it was what it was. I don't know if I would do it again. Potentially, I think I would prefer the continuity of care of MGP or a private midwife, but it just depends on availability and the expense, whether we could afford a private midwife second time round. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing, the continuity of care, you can pretty much only get it in the MGP, or if you get a private midwife. I mean, if you get a private obstetrician, usually you'd see the same obstetrician, but you might have a different midwife because they work with maybe a few midwives at their practice. So, and
that's right.
The option of either the private obstetrician or the private midwife comes at a cost, which is not accessible to everyone, and you can't always justify that cost. So, and especially if you don't have private health insurance for a private obstetrician. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's really hard. Wow. So I mean, lucky for you, you had a mum who's a GP, you had a cousin who's a midwife, and so therefore you could get, I guess, a bit more insight into like what actually happens at the 20-week scan, and why do I need to do the glucose tolerance test, and what happens at the 30-week appointment and stuff like that. So you can kind of like get a bit of timeline and a bit of, oh, okay, we talk about this, we talk about that, okay, yes, that makes sense. Because otherwise, as you said, you're totally in the dark and you've got no idea what you're in for because you've never done it. That's really hard.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I was really fortunate that I did have health practitioners in my family, and so they kind of could give me a bit of a heads up and be a sounding board, especially towards really throughout the whole pregnancy. Every time I had a question like, is this normal, and should I be feeling this pain here, it was great to have them to calm my nerves, because I am a very anxious person. I have had anxiety my whole life, and so it was really important to me that I felt really supported and had people I could go to during my pregnancy, because it is such a vulnerable time. And I really, as much as I was so excited, I felt the weight of the responsibility of carrying this little baby, and I found that really quite overwhelming and stressful sometimes. So having my mum and cousin there to support me was so great.
Oh, amazing. So you hired a doula. That's good because at least you've got one doula and continuity of care there.
Yes.
Was she to be present at your birth as well?
Yeah, she was. Her name is Alyssa from Cherish Birth, and she is so beautiful. She is still a friend of mine, and we stay in regular contact. Yeah, it's so lovely, and she was great. That was a reason why we wanted a doula too, to have that continuity of care and that person to help support us through the birth, and for my husband, because I really feel for husbands and birth partners during birth. It's such a full-on experience, and I think a lot of them feel really helpless. So I really wanted a doula for Joe as well. And she was supposed to be there for our birth, but unfortunately COVID restrictions meant that she wasn't allowed. The lockdown lifted, I think, the 2 days after my son was born. So we just missed out on being able to have her present. And yeah, so that was a real shame. But she was at our house while we, until we went to the hospital. So that was really good.
Oh, wow. That's, COVID robbed us of a lot of things, including, being able to have as many support people as you want present in the room because, like, for example, some people, I've had guests coming in saying they've had obviously their husband and also their mum because it made them feel, safe and that's how they wanted it to be. And they just couldn't have that. That's such a shame. How did you prepare, I guess, both you and Joe, how did you both prepare for birth? So you had your doula and she probably helped you and gave you some form of birth education. Did you do any other preparation, maybe other courses? You listened to podcasts, but anything else you did?
Yeah, so our doula also runs the Illawarra Birth Classes business. So she's got her doula business and birth education business. So that was really handy. We did the Illawarra Birth Classes and the 4th trimester class. So that was 2 full days on Zoom because of COVID. But learning everything to do with birth positions, how to use a rebozo, different comfort techniques, what to expect, the different interventions that are available when they may be used, the different pain relief, when to go to the hospital, what signs to be looking for, and then 4th trimester breastfeeding, sleep, what are newborn sleepy cues, what's normal newborn behavior, all of that kind of stuff. We did in the courses, which was great. And I also read Birth Skills, the book with different techniques on managing pain and labor, which I really enjoyed that read. And and I did a bit of a breastfeeding class with my cousin who's a midwife. We did a video call session and she talked me through breastfeeding positions and techniques because I really wanted to make sure I was prepared for breastfeeding because I hear all the time that mums don't know what to expect with breastfeeding and find it really hard. So I wanted to prepare myself for that. And then of course just research and podcasts and reading, just consuming everything pregnancy and birth. It was I couldn't concentrate on anything else in my pregnancy except for pregnancy and birth. I was just so obsessed. Like the minute I found out I was pregnant, I was like, I don't even want to be at my job anymore. Like all I can think about is having this baby. It just consumed me. I was, it was just such a dream. I was so excited.
Wow, that's so funny because it sounds like you never got a rest because you would have been either listening to a podcast, doing a course, or reading something the whole pregnancy. Wow.
I know. Just about, or just on Marketplace buying baby furniture and I couldn't get enough of it. I was absolutely loving it. Although in saying that, I did not enjoy pregnancy. I did not like being pregnant. I was so excited for the baby, but I just found pregnancy to be such an uncomfortable experience, and I think that shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
I think pregnancy can be glorified a little bit, especially on Instagram, and the beautiful maternity photos. And it is, it is beautiful and it is special and amazing. But like, man, the nausea, the restless legs, the heartburn, the aches, the hair everywhere. I had such a hairy tummy. It was hilarious. I was like, what the heck is going on here? Just all of those uncomfortable symptoms. The fatigue. I really struggled with all of that. I'm a bit of a sook. I'm not a very good patient. So, having all of those niggly aches and pains and sickness and tiredness and, I just found that to be so uncomfortable. I just couldn't wait to have the baby. I was like, righto. I was just counting down the days. I was so keen to be a mum, but not keen to be pregnant.
Yeah, and see what you're saying. I think it's not uncommon. Like other mums have like been the exact same. They just don't like pregnancy, whether it's because, it's a body image thing. Obviously, your body goes through a lot of changes, or whether it's related to, sickness, just not feeling great, not having your body to yourself as well. Obviously you've got someone else growing in
definitely.
And I mean, it's really hard growing a human being, creating a brain and lungs and heart. That's a lot of work. And obviously it takes toll on your body to be able to, supply your baby with, food and blood flow and oxygen and all of that. So it's, and obviously, you're continuing to work, there's a lot of just, mental and physical stress and load on you while you're growing a baby. That's a big transition and it's a lot of effort.
It's huge. Yes. And, mums do it all the time, women do it all the time, and they just, carry on with their life. And I guess I just didn't ever think about how hard it actually was, because everyone else makes it look so easy. And then when I was living it, I was like, man, hats off to every woman who's carried a baby, because this is so tough. And trying to work and keep up your other commitments as well. Especially the first trimester, I have a phobia of vomiting. I've had it since I was a little girl. I am so terrified of vomiting, and that's been a big obstacle between me and getting pregnant. I've been scared about falling pregnant. I had been scared about falling pregnant my whole life because I didn't want to deal with the morning sickness. And so I found that to be really difficult. I didn't actually physically vomit during my pregnancy, but there were plenty of close calls. And I found that so stressful, especially at work, because I worked as a TV reporter. And so I'd be out trying to interview people for the news, and then like one story we did outside a fish market, and like, oh my gosh, I was like, oh man, nah, this is not good, and everyone's trying to talk at me, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so stressful. So lots of awkward moments like that. I was always so worried about being sick when I was out on the road talking to people, or in the car with the cameraman, and that no one else except my boss knew at that stage. So I found that to be the most challenging part. It was really really stressful for me, but I felt really proud of myself for being able to get through that experience and come out the other side. And so that was, something that's quite unique to me. No one likes nausea or morning sickness, but for me it was kind of like the worst thing in the world. I get
that.
And I was just fortunate that I didn't get it severely, because that would have been really traumatizing for me. So fortunately it was around 14 weeks it tapered off, and I started to feel a little bit more like myself. So it was only short-lived, thank goodness.
Oh, amazing. And so I'm guessing you didn't vomit in transition as well when you were in labour?
No, I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, that was the first time. I did. Yeah, that was the first time I'd vomited in 10 years. And I was not happy. No. I was not very happy about it, but I had prepared myself that was possible.
Yeah.
I knew it was pretty common, and I was worried about it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
I did, and
yeah.
I thought like, oh man, 10 years. So
Wow.
anyway,
Yeah.
I'm back to trying to start. I'll try and go for 15 now.
Wow. Oh, that's yeah, you're not the first one I hear saying that, like that, you have a phobia of vomiting. Again, I don't think it's rare. I
Mm.
think it's, fairly common, and that's just so hard in pregnancy. Like it's just like
Oh,
I
I
think I've heard
know.
stories of women saying like sometimes they know they would feel better if they did, but you just can't,
Yes, but they won't
Yeah,
let themselves.
no, that's it.
Yeah,
And I mean,
I think that was very much
yeah,
me.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
really hard, obviously, because you've got that phobia and you just can't help it.
Mm.
And yeah, anyway, let's move on
Yeah.
from this. um, so so how did you feel physically? I know you said there was a lot of, obviously we've spoken about the nausea at length. How did you feel, especially in the second and then into the third trimester, as your belly gets a bit bigger, you're still working, you're still on your feet,
Mm.
you've got to do reporting and all of that. How was that on your body?
Mm. It was really difficult. The second trimester, I moved into a different role. So I
Okay.
was presenting and producing news. So I was at a desk. I
Okay.
didn't have to be out on the road. So that was a good thing. But in saying that, there was still a lot of aches from sitting all day.
Hmm.
And yeah, probably from around 26
Hmm.
weeks. I had really bad back pain,
Oh,
and I'd be there trying to do stretches in my
yeah.
lunch break on the floor to get through the day. I had heat packs all the
Hmm.
time, and yeah, I found it really, really uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And yeah, I had what else? Lots of little like aching pains that the obstetrician said probably was Braxton Hicks in my
Okay.
third trimester. But I did end up having Braxton Hicks right at the end, and it was
Hmm.
different. It kind of felt like period cramps
Hmm.
again, just I think baby's position. So it was just lots of cramping pains, lots of lightning crotch. And I was really tired and really sore. Like I just felt, I'm only just a bit over 5 foot and I'm pretty petite. And I just think the baby ran out of room. Like I could
Right.
feel part of the bub everywhere I pressed on my whole
Yeah.
tummy from like, one side to the other and up and down. I was like, there is no more room. Whereas I have friends with longer torsos
Hmm.
and they didn't experience as much discomfort.
Hmm.
So I do think being very short exacerbated
Hmm.
the discomfort with my back and pelvic pain. And I had a lot of trouble with my pelvic
Hmm.
floor. It started in the second trimester. I started to get leaking when I
Hmm.
was like walking or sneezing. And that was a bit of a concern to me because I knew it was only the second trimester. I was going to get a lot bigger. I was going to
Hmm.
have to go through birth. So I started to see a pelvic floor physio
Amazing.
then to, try and work on, strengthening and preparing my pelvic floor and getting it in the best,
Mm.
possible capacity for birth.
Yeah, and see, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that you experience leaking, because something that we don't talk about. No one wants to talk about anything to do with what happens down under, unless it's birth. But yeah,
Mm,
otherwise we just don't talk about it, which is a
yes.
shame, because it's not uncommon to have such, issues, whether it's leaking urine or sometimes it's feces, but it's not normal.
Yeah.
And so it should be addressed straight away. And you've done the right
Yes.
thing. You went to see a women's health physio. That's the best thing you can do, because it means that there is
Yeah.
something to be addressed, probably with your pelvic floor, whether that's, your pelvic floor is too tonic, basically. So it's just on all the time,
Mm,
or it's a little bit
mm-hmm.
weak, and you don't know from leaking. You can't just say, oh yeah, it must be weak, because actually it could not be. So yeah, and thank you so much for saying that,
Mm,
because it's good to hear that you experienced that and this is what you've done. So that's great advice for women who may be going through that and thinking, oh, I'm so ashamed because I shouldn't be, I shouldn't be leaking, and I don't know what to
No.
do. And if I do
Yes.
nothing about it, no one's going to know. And it's like, it's such a shame because
Yeah.
there is something to be done. Seeing a women's health physio
Yeah.
is, did it help you in, for your leaking? Did it help?
Yeah, I think it did help. In my case, I have a hypertonic pelvic floor, so those muscles are switched on all the time, which means I don't have much range of motion to contract when I really need it because they're always contracted. So I did a lot of work with her on just learning to relax the muscles, and yeah, it was helpful. She gave me some good exercises to help with my lower back pain and everything as well. So that was good. It was sort of a bit of a twofold reason why I was there, one for all the aching and two for the pelvic floor, but they were linked. Like I would clench my glutes all the time because my pelvic floor was always so tight, and that was causing a lot of pain in my glutes and my lower back. So by learning to relax my pelvic floor, it was also helping relax the rest of those muscles in my lower back and glutes, and by stretching out those glute muscles, it was helping to relax my pelvic floor. So yeah, they're all linked. And yeah, I definitely found it helpful for sure, seeing her and getting some exercises to work on that. And I did use my dilators regularly throughout my pregnancy because I was nervous about a vaginal delivery with my pelvic floor muscles being so tight, and I was worried that would be difficult then for baby to come out, or mean there'd be increased risk for tearing. So yes, I used my dilators to try and stretch out and relax those muscles in preparation for birth.
Oh, amazing! Wow, that's you've done literally everything that you could have done to help yourself. And I'm really glad you said that pelvic floor and your backache was linked, because not a lot of people know that. I mean, obviously I'm super biased. I'm an exercise physiologist, so as you said that, I'm thinking it might have been linked. But yeah, it's everything in the body is connected in a way, and helping resolving or working on one issue, being your pelvic floor hypertonicity, helped with your lower back pain. And so people sometimes don't think about it. They just go, oh, look, it will get better on its own. But actually by doing this work, you're actually helping, another part of your body that you might not have realized was also working over time. In your case, your glutes were just working over time. And that's really good. Wow. Did you learn, I guess, did it also give you another perspective on birth? Because, I guess learning about the pelvic floor, sometimes it helps to go, oh, okay, so that's what's in my pelvis. And obviously this is where baby's going to come out of. So I need to relax my pelvic floor. Did it help to, I guess, put things in a different light maybe?
Yeah, it was. I found it really educational to understand how it's all linked and how it all works. The physio I did see, though, did tell me that I had increased risk of needing a cesarean because my baby was measuring large and I had a hypertonic pelvic floor, and that I found a bit discouraging and disheartening. But it made me determined to do everything I could, and also I knew that there was relaxin in the body and that birth, your body takes over, and having this hypertonic pelvic floor didn't mean that there wasn't any way I could have a vaginal birth. Because I on the topic, without wanting to overshare too much for your listeners, but I was really grateful that Alex was conceived quickly, because I first discovered that I had this hypertonic pelvic floor when I had intercourse with my husband for the first time, and it was incredibly painful, and has been and continues to be, but it's something I'm working on. And so having Alex, I was so happy that it happened quickly, because it wasn't an enjoyable experience. It never really has been for me, and yes, and then, I used to feel very anxious, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, if I can't handle this, how on earth is a baby supposed to come out of here? Because a baby is a whole lot bigger than what's going in. And that made me feel a bit anxious. But, when I got to understand a bit more about how the body works and how the hormones work in birth, it gave me more confidence that I just had to trust my body to do its thing. All those lovely hormones will be working in harmony to relax everything. And and I could still have a natural delivery.
Yeah, exactly. And you've literally summarized it in such a beautiful way. That's it. Your body is made to birth, and there are times where potentially a cesarean is needed for potentially medical reason to you or to baby. But in most cases, a vaginal birth is doable, because we are made to birth. We have, as you said, we've got so much hormone that works in our body. Even before we go into labor, we've got hormones that actually start, switching to get into, basically preparing for labor. And so then when we're in labor, those hormones will also change based on the stage of labor we're in. And that all allows for, the pelvis and the hips to expand, and for your muscles to relax, and for your joints to be a little bit more loose, so that, baby can descend and can basically squeeze through the pelvis and then come out. It's absolutely amazing. And obviously the muscles, the skin, the fascia, everything stretches, to allow for the biggest part being the head to come through. So it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's such a miracle.
Yeah, it is. And wow, you've and you did a lot of hard work in your in your pregnancy, because using dilators is it's not it I'm guessing it wasn't enjoyable for you, but as you said, it helped you to stretch the tissues surrounding, so that when it came to birth, it helped. And because in third trimester, around I think it's 37-ish weeks, you can maybe start looking at perineal massage if that's something that resonates with you. Which can be it can be painful, because obviously if you've never stretched those tissues before, and it's the first time they're being stretched, that would be quite a different sensation in the body for sure. But in your case, you did a lot of work prior to that to stretch it also. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. It was annoying. I still have to use dilators. When we come to making baby number 2, that'll probably be a big part of the procedure and the lead up to that. But I hate it. Like, I should use them more. I just find them, they are uncomfortable. It's a hassle, and even harder now that I've got a toddler running around. It's like, you've got to try and find time that you're quiet and on your own. And it's just, it's just awkward. But they are helpful, and they have proven to be really helpful for me in my journey. So I'd urge any other woman, if you're struggling with painful intercourse or vaginismus or hypertonic pelvic floor, to definitely give them a go and stick with it, even though, it's annoying and can be uncomfortable, but it does pay off.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, it's so intimate as well. Like, you need to be, on your own, or potentially with your husband as well, because that can obviously be something that can be done as a couple, but obviously not with your toddler. And you need to be, and you need to be relaxed, and it needs to be, when you feel you feel good, you don't feel like you have to respond to your toddler right now. So it needs to be when you're not rushed. So
that's right.
It's difficult, but as you said, it helps you, the benefits, but just like everything in life, it's a balance. You've got to make the time for it, and that's the hardest part.
That's right.
So tell us the weeks and days leading up to Alexander's birth. How did you feel, physically and mentally? And did you go past your due date as well?
Yeah. So I, as I said before, super uncomfortable, so grumpy being pregnant. I was like, nah, done, over this. And I told little Alex in my tummy, I was like, you can come at 38 weeks if you want. Like, I wanted a baby. I, obviously didn't want a preemie baby. Yeah. But I was not going to be disappointed with a couple of weeks earlier. Yeah. I was very organized. I had everything sorted. So I was like, you know what? Come whenever you want. So yes, I finished up work at 34 weeks. Yeah. I was planning to work till 36, but I was just way too uncomfortable and tired by 34 weeks. And I'd come to work and set an alarm for 10 minutes on my phone and just sleep on my desk for 10 minutes because I just couldn't get through my days. I was just exhausted, and I'd come home from work, sleep for 2 or 3 hours after work, get up, do dinner, and then go back to bed. I just was so tired, really tired. And yeah, so I went on maternity leave at 34 weeks, and I loved it. I, spent time out in the garden doing some stretching on my yoga mat. I prepped a whole bunch of meals for the freezer. My husband and I stuck up the wall decals for the nursery. I had that all organized. The one thing we didn't have was the car seat and the car. Two really big things. Yeah, probably should have been higher, first on the list. But we went to buy the car seat, but they didn't have the one we wanted in stock. So we had to wait for it to be ordered in, and we had to wait for our car, which we bought in Queensland, and I had to get driven down to us. And at the time it was really hard to buy a secondhand car because of COVID. The secondhand car market was super expensive. So anyway, we eventually got our car, and we got the car seat in, and then a few days later, early labour started. Wow. So we just made it. I started doing some antenatal expressing, and my husband said to me, don't you dare do that until we've got the car seat in the car, because I told him it could sometimes it can bring on labour. So yes, I had to wait until I was 37 weeks. The car seat was in the car, and then 37 weeks and 5 days, I think it was, or around there, 37 weeks 4 days maybe. I started getting. I woke up with crampy kind of pains, like period cramp pains, and I was like, okay, I know this is the start. I'd spoken to other mums. I was like, righto. And, a good friend of mine, she woke up with those period cramp pains and then had her baby that night. Yeah. So I was like, okay, it's on. Maybe I'm going to meet my baby today. And I had a bit of a crisis of confidence, bit of a panic. And then I was like, no, it's okay. I can do this. Pull myself together. And I was like, righto. So I was excited. My mucus plug had come away, the bloody show, all of that kind of stuff had happened also. So I was like, right. Anyway, the cramping kind of continued for the day, and then nothing sort of really eventuated. And then I think that may have been the Sunday. Oh gosh, I can't remember. All the days roll into one, don't they? Anyway, the next day I woke up and my husband was saying, like, should I go to work? Should I not? Because we knew I was in this early labour stage. And he was going on paternity leave on Wednesday. Okay. Wednesday was his last day. And he had some really important meetings and stuff he had to finish off on the Monday. And I was having some contractions then, like the period cramps had kind of gone into some lighter contractions. And I said, look, I think it'll be okay. It doesn't look like it's progressing that quickly. You should be fine. I'll call you if I need you to come home, because he works an hour and a half away. Oh, wow. And then I got up out of bed and walked to the bathroom, and my waters broke. Right. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this could change things. I said, I think my waters broke. And he came in, he's like, I think so. And I said, I don't know. I don't think I peed myself. I had done a lot of urine leaking in the weeks leading up to this. But I was like, this is a bit different to the usual urine leaking. I'm pretty sure this is what my waters are. I don't really know. So, yes, I thought, okay. So I called my doula and I said, so my waters just broke. And she said, great, that's exciting. And I said, well, what do I do now? Like, do I need to go to the hospital? Are things going to amp up? And she said, well, it all just depends. You kind of don't know. Yep. And I was like, oh, I hate that answer. That's what I got my whole life. Like, no one can tell you yes or no to anything. And I like definites. I like to have control. And I was like, this sucks. I don't know what's going on. I can't control it. I thought I was going to have my baby last night. And now, anyway, so there was a bit of blood when my waters broke. And so I was unsure if that was, okay or not. So I called the hospital to tell them, and they said, okay, come in and we'll check and bring your bag and everything just in case you have to stay. But my husband wasn't allowed in because of COVID restrictions, so I had to go in by myself. And I was having contractions probably like once every 10 minutes. So yeah, starting to get a little bit more regular, and enough that they were, uncomfortable. And yeah, so anyway, my husband did go to work. He went to leave for work. I said, no, go to work. I'll be fine. I know my waters have broken, but, things are still pretty slow. And he went down the street and then he came back and he was like, no, I couldn't do it. I couldn't leave you. And I was really grateful because I was a bit nervous. I thought, I don't know. So we went to the hospital, or he dropped me off. I was in there for ages. They're always under-resourced, so it took a long time before someone kind of tended to me. And yes, I said, yes, your waters have broken, and we'd like to induce you if you would agree to that. And I said, no, I don't want to be induced. And I'm like, I'm having contractions, so like I know things are kicking off. And they got an obstetrician in to talk to me, and she was pretty forceful about wanting to induce me the next day. She said, fine, like you can go home today, but like you have to come back tomorrow for another check, and we'll induce you then. And I spoke to the midwife and she said, look, really you can have up to about 3 days before they get really worried about the infection risk. And I said, okay, well, I would like to take that 3 days I'd like as long as I can while still being safe. Anyway, look, it just continued. I went home and had contractions on and off, and then Tuesday rolled around. I think I had my TENS machine on then to sort of help. I woke up and I decided to use the TENS to help me work through some of the contractions. Went to the hospital and it all kind of died down. And then I think it was the Wednesday. Wednesday. I went into the hospital and they, put the monitoring on, check baby and everything. And they said it would just be like 20 minutes, just check, see how everything's going, maybe give you some antibiotics to take as a precaution, and you can go home. Anyway, I was there for about 8 hours. I didn't get to go home for a long time. And I didn't have food or anything. My contractions died down in about 10 minutes of being there. The bright lights, the stress, everything, labor, totally stalled. It was gone. And I was so disheartened. I was so tired. I was so stressed. And the obstetrician came in and spoke to me, and, they were talking to me about, the risk of infection and how it was increasing. And if I haven't gone into spontaneous labor by now, it's less likely I am going to go into spontaneous labor. More likely I'm going to need to be induced. And I was so upset. And they took my blood pressure and everything. And then the midwife said to the obstetrician, her blood pressure was a bit high because I was so stressed. But of course, then they had to test me for preeclampsia. So then I had to do more tests and things for preeclampsia. And I lost it. I was just bawling my eyes out. I was sobbing. I had a fight with Joe because he was stressed and tired and hungry, and I was stressed and tired and hungry. And he was like, we was at each other. We were so cranky. And we just wanted to get home. And so that was terrible. And I was texting my doula and she was like, you need to get out of there right now. Your oxytocin, this is terrible for your oxytocin. Quick. And can I talk to Joe? And I was like, no, Joe's cranky. He doesn't want to talk to anyone. We've just had a fight. night. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is a disaster. This is everything we don't want happening for a woman in labour. Anyway, look, eventually they came in, they offered us a sandwich.
Oh, about time.
And I had a I know. So, because I was in a state, I was just crying and crying. And so they were like, oh, maybe we'll give her some food. Maybe that'll help. And they sent me home and they said, look, they said, look, we'd like to induce you now. But, you know, because it would be easier on our resourcing for us to induce you now, but it's your choice. If you want to come back tomorrow, you can. I said, look, yep, Joe and I had a chat and we decided, look, if nothing happens overnight, I'll come in the morning and I'll be induced, because it had been a few days. Anyway, so I went home that night. Our doula came over and I had the most intense lightning crotch. Baby was so low and it was, you know, bringing me to tears. It was like, it was really quite painful. But it was, like there was a lot of action going on down there. I could feel so much movement around in that pelvic region, and I was on the fit ball trying to get comfortable. You know, we talked things through with the doula and told her our plan, and she, you know, made sure that we were happy with that and it was what we wanted, and it was. And she said, okay. And, you know, looking at how I was moving around and everything, she said, I think I'll be back later tonight. I'll see you in a few hours. And I said, okay. And sure enough, things did kick off finally.
Amazing.
So Wednesday, early hours of Thursday morning, I woke up and the contractions were a lot stronger. I was like, great, excellent. We called the doula over. Alyssa came around and and it was lovely. You know, I just had the candles going. I had some beautiful music on. And just spent the night on the yoga mat, on the fit ball, moving around, just all of us in the candlelight. It was so lovely. And honestly, Joe was the most incredible birth partner. He was running me baths and showers, and making sure, everything was beautiful, and cuddling me, making sure I had any food or drinks that I wanted. I was just treated like a queen. It was so lovely. And I'm such a romantic, and honestly, it was like probably one of the most romantic and loved times that I felt, even throughout all the moaning and groaning. It was really lovely. So I had a beautiful experience for that, laboring at home. Sun rose, doula went and got us some breakfast, so I had something to eat, and I didn't really eat much for the rest of the day. I didn't really feel like it. I had lots of Powerade and a few lollies and things, but the contractions were getting more intense. The hospital called up in the morning to ask if I was coming in, and Joe said, no, she's in labour. And they said, great, okay, well, we'll see her when she's ready to come in. And they called me every few hours after that, hassling me to come in, which was really annoying. And because it had been so long since my waters had broken, I had to check my temperature every few hours and monitor the colour of my waters. That was, continuously leaking, and that's something I didn't know. I thought when your waters broke, they just broke and that was it. I didn't know that a lot of the time you just have this continual leaking of your amniotic fluid for days, and that was so annoying. So yes, for anyone listening, if you don't know that's something to prepare for. Make sure you have your maternity pads handy. Yeah, that's right. And then look, Thursday afternoon, everything died down again. The contractions kind of stopped. And I thought, oh, not again. I was so disheartened. I was exhausted. I was so cranky. I was like, I thought I was going to meet this baby on like Sunday or Monday or whatever it was. And now it's Thursday, and is this baby ever going to come? It was really disheartening. So Alyssa said, look, how about I go for a bit and you try and get some rest while you can, and we'll touch base a bit later. And Joe and I went for a little bit of a walk. We had a chat and we decided, look, we'll go in 7:00 tonight. If things haven't picked up again, we'll go to the hospital regardless. If I need to be induced, so be it. But this baby's got to come out eventually. We can't. I felt I had given my body a good amount of time, and if it needed the extra help of augmenting, then I was okay with that decision. And it was almost like once I'd made that decision, the pressure was lifted off me,
Mm-hmm.
and the labor kicked off again.
Oh.
And it was like the pressure I had for me to
Mm-hmm.
try and make this happen was stalling it. And then as soon as I set that time and I said, right, 7 o'clock, that's it. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. What will be, will be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was when it all kicked up. So the doula left. Joe and I went to have a rest, and Joe went to sleep in about 5 seconds. And I'm there like moaning, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, through these contractions. And I didn't want an epidural, but I was like starting to get a bit like, oh, okay, you know what? Maybe that's not a bad idea. And so I said to Joe, I was like, hey, I don't know, maybe we should go to the hospital. Maybe I do want an epidural. Like, this is actually kind of really intense. And he said, no, we said we'd go to the hospital at 7 o'clock, and rolled over and went back to sleep. And I was like, well, yeah, that's what we said before. But things have changed in the last 15 minutes. So anyway, I got up. And I could feel so much pressure in my bowel, and but I went to the toilet. Nothing happened, and I texted Alyssa, and I was like, I can feel a lot of pressure in my bowel. Is that normal? And she said, yeah, that's a really good sign. Do you want me to come over? And I said, no, I think I'm okay for now. And about 10 minutes later, I texted her again, and I said, actually, maybe I would like you to come over. And she was already parked out the front of my house.
Oh.
She'd already come. She was great. So she came in and, helped me. So, she got me up, she said, try walking and making some more vocalizations. And so I was walking up and down the stairs. And, by that point, I was having to lean on things for the contractions, to work through them on the couch, on the bench. We let Joe sleep for a little bit, and then Joe woke up, and, here I was, full blown moaning and groaning and pacing around the house. And he was like, oh, wow, whoa, what happened? I just went to sleep and nothing was happening. Woke up and here we are. And we started getting, everything packed for the hospital, and, as in I had the bags packed, but the little, we packed the TENS machine and a vomit bag and stress balls to squeeze, all of those things. And, and so I was excited. I was like, okay, hooray, it's finally happening. We got to the hospital at 7 o'clock, like we said, and got to the hospital, and they wanted to ask me all the COVID questions. Have you been to a hot spot? Have you got any cold or flu symptoms? And I'm there just like stomping around, and the lady's like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just in labor, but like I'm fine. And she went, oh no, do you need a wheelchair? Should we get you a wheelchair? And I said, no, I don't need a wheelchair. Like, I'm all good. I just want to get to the birth unit. I don't want to stand here talking to you. So anyway, they hurried me through then. They didn't want a baby happening in the foyer, I guess. And I got up there, and the midwife looked at me, and she said, we'll put you in this birth suite. And then she said, actually, you know what? We'll put you in this birth suite because it'll be quicker. And I said, okay, great. And I thought, right, everyone's rushing me along. I must be ready to have this baby. Got upset about getting the room set up with the fairy lights and the music and the essential oils diffusing, and asked for a birth ball and a mat and all of the things. I do remember feeling a bit anxious though. As soon as I was in the hospital, I felt better at home. When I got to the hospital, it was very clinical, and I was desperately trying to make it feel like home, but it wasn't the same. And they wanted to do a vaginal examination, and I didn't want one, but I didn't have the energy to fight and say no, so I agreed to it. And I was worried it would be very painful for me given my hypertonic pelvic floor, but fortunately it wasn't. And I said I didn't want to know how many centimeters I was, because I didn't want to be disappointed. And I later found out that at that point I was only 4 centimeters, and that I fully thought I was ready to have the baby then. I was like, wow, this is it. I remember saying to my husband on the drive, like, if this is transition, I think I'm coping a lot better than I thought. And he said, that's great. And I said, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's going to get worse. Like, maybe it's going to get more intense. And it did. When they did that first VE, they said, look, I can feel some of your waters haven't broken. Would you like me to break them? It'll speed things up, but it'll be more intense. And in hindsight, I regret saying yes to that. I wish I had just left my body to do its thing. But I agreed to it. I thought, okay, I guess we need to speed things up. So sure. And then I went from 4 centimeters to 7 centimeters in about 20 minutes.
Oh, gosh.
So things progressed very quickly, and I didn't cope very well with that. I was going into the shower, and it's so funny when they talk about women in transition and like, the ridiculous things that they say and do. And I knew that I was. I remember at the time thinking like, oh, this is it. I'm one of those crazy women in transition. There was a plastic chair in the shower and I'm smashing the chair on the ground and like throwing things around and like yelling, and that is so not like me. I'm very I'm not aggressive at all. I'm not assertive. I'm not a thrower or a yeller. And I was just like a wild beast. It was so intense. And I just thought like, I don't know how I'm going to survive this. Like, I just didn't think I was going to survive. I remember thinking that I just wanted to die. I was like, this is too much. And I kept saying, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And the midwife said, this is transition. You're doing it. You're doing it right now. And I was like, I can't. I cannot do it anymore. And I felt sick in my stomach, and that made me feel really anxious. And they said, do you want some anti-nausea medication? I said, yes, that would be great, please. And yeah, but anyway, it was too late. It was too far gone. Yeah. Before they could get me any medication, I started vomiting. No. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I was already really, really struggling to manage. My Joe was doing hip squeezes. But nothing was helping. Like nothing was kind of really taking the edge off. I was just completely overwhelmed, and I lost like the mindset. The zone, whatever, like I just was gone. I was just hysterical. And I decided at that point, when I was finding the contractions to be so intense and overwhelming, and I was vomiting, and I wasn't going to stop because I think the pain was, and the hormones was all kind of contributing to the vomiting. And I was like, nah, I just couldn't do it anymore. So I had a code word, which was pineapple for epidural. Because in my birth preferences, I said I don't want to be offered an epidural, but I'll ask for one if I really need it. And I had a code word so that I knew that I had made a conscious choice to, and I didn't just say on a whim, oh, I want an epidural. So I started screaming out, pineapple, 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 over and over and over. And they were like, okay. We get it. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And they said, okay, do you want to try the gas first? I said, nah. Do you want to try it? Nah. I'd made up my mind. Yeah. I wanted an epidural. And she said, okay, the midwife said, would you like me to check and see how far along you are first? And I said, okay, sure. And if I'm 9.5 centimeters, I'll stick it out. But if I'm any less than that, I don't think I can do it. I don't have the energy anymore. And I was about 7 centimeters. And I was like, forget it. That's it. I'm going to have an epidural. And fortunately, the anaesthetist was quite quick. Yeah. I didn't have to wait very long. Was a bit exasperated by my flailing and carrying on like a total maniac. Like, stay still. I'm trying to, and I was, Anyway, and then instantly after the epidural, I just felt so much relief and so much calm. Like even before I think it had actually kicked in, I think just in my brain, knowing that I was going to get a break, I felt so much better. I apologize to everybody. Sorry, everybody. That wasn't like me. I don't normally carry on that way. I'm back to normal now, as you were. And I felt better. It was the right choice for me at that time. It allowed me to get back into a calm headspace. And I had a sleep. I went to sleep. I was so tired. And I slept for 4 hours, I think.
Amazing.
The rest of the labor. Yep. I woke up at one point and I could feel the epidural was wearing off. I wish that I had left that, but I was so... traumatized by what I had felt before that I turned the epidural right up again. As soon as I could feel it, I was like, no, I don't want to feel anything. Yeah. I was so scared of feeling the intensity again. Anyway, woke up around midnight. I came and did a check, said you're 10 centimeters. Good to go, good to push. And I thought, oh, great. Just slept through the rest of it. I felt great. I felt really good and refreshed. And yeah, so it was lovely. Had the music on. It was just the one midwife, Joe and myself, and they had to coach me through the pushing because I couldn't feel when I was having a contraction. And it was going pretty well. They was just starting to see Alex's head, and which was really special. And then the midwife kept looking over at the monitor, and she said, "Oh, I'm just going to get an obstetrician to come in and have a look." And I thought, "Oh, okay." Obstetrician came in. Baby's heart rate was rising. He was in distress. They needed to get him out quite quickly. And the obstetrician said, "Look, do you want this baby out or not? If you want this baby out, you've got to really give me your biggest push." And I was like, "Are you joking? No one wants this baby out more than me. I've been here pushing until my eyes are about to pop out of my head for however long it's been. I've been having contractions for days. I've been carrying him for 9 months. I want this baby out." What a ridiculous thing to say. Anyway, so I gave it my best push, but it just wasn't happening. So he said, "Okay, we're going to have to do an episiotomy and an instrumental delivery." And I asked, "Okay, what are my options? What are the risks? What are the benefits? Why is it needed?" And he talked me through all that, and I said, "Okay, yep, look, let's go with that then." So I had the episiotomy, and I was, grateful that I had the epidural on board. So that wasn't painful for me. And, brought out the forceps, and I was like, whoa, they really do look like salad tongs. So that was a bit intimidating. But yes, fortunately, it only was a few little pushes on my part and the use of the forceps, and Alex was born without any, major complications, which was great. Put him on my chest, but he wasn't crying. And, they were rubbing him down, trying to get him to cry. And I only had him on my chest for maybe 10 seconds, and they whisked him off and popped him on the resus table, and they were trying to get him to cry. And a pediatrician was in, and a pediatric nurse, and I think 2 midwives and 2 obstetricians. So it was a full room, and it was a bit worrying because he wasn't breathing very well. And then the obstetrician said, "Oh, we've got a PPH." And I knew that was a postpartum hemorrhage. And I was like, great. So while the baby team were dealing with the baby, and Joe was over there with Alex, trying to get him to cry, trying to, work out what was happening with him. And the obstetrician was with me, and they were giving me shots of stuff to try and stop the bleeding and massaging my uterus. And they, did a managed, what is it called? The third stage? Managed third stage? Where they give you the shot and then
is it
actively managed?
Yeah, active third stage. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, rather than physiological.
Yeah, that's right.
So my preference was for physiological, but given the blood loss, they had to hurry that along. So yes, they did all that. It was only a few minutes, fortunately, and the blood loss settled. The uterus started to contract back, and yes, and I didn't need any blood transfusions or anything like that. So that was good. It was well managed on the lower scale of hemorrhage. At the time, it was still a bit nerve-wracking because I was like, oh, I know sometimes things don't end up very well with hemorrhage, so I hope, this is okay. And it was fine. I think it was just a matter of my uterus being so fatigued from all the contractions for so long that, like, baby and uterus just kind of gave up a bit in the end and was like, I think, it was just a very, very tiring for my body and for Alex. So... yes, then they took Alex to the NICU or the nursery, and the pediatrician came in, spoke to me and said, "Look, I'm really sorry, but I think we're going to keep him in there for a while and give him some antibiotics, because given the fact that he was in some respiratory distress and your waters broke days ago, there is an increased risk that he could have an infection, and we just want to be on the safe side." And I was devastated. I really wanted to have that golden hour, the skin to skin, the first breastfeed, and I'd worked so hard to try and protect my spontaneous labor and not be induced, to give myself the best chance of that. And it didn't happen. when the epidural wore off and I went to see him in the NICU, I didn't even know, like, you know, what I was looking for. I was like, which one's my baby? I don't know. I only saw him for 10 seconds and it just felt, really foreign and disappointing. And, and to see him he was all connected up to lots of different wires and things. And it was sad. I was really upset. And I, went back to my room that night without him while he stayed in there. And that wasn't how I imagined it going at all. So that was really disappointing. But, on the plus side, like, his breathing issues resolved very quickly. And by that afternoon, he was born at 1 a.m. and then by about, 1 to 2 p.m. I was allowed to take him back to the room with me and just take him into the nursery to get his antibiotics administered via a cannula. But he didn't need to stay in there full time. So that was great. Sorry, I think that was like a question about the days before labor and just turned into the entire birth.
No, that's that was good. And wow, what a labor. Like, so you were in labor for 4 days, and that's so long. Tough, like mentally, physically. It just sounds excruciating for you because you obviously you thought on Sunday you were having Alexander. And then things died off, and then they died off on Monday, and so on. And the pressure from the hospital it's really hard to deal with. And you did so well to stand up for yourself for so long because, at this point, you're so vulnerable. You, more than anyone, obviously you and Joe, you both want to meet your baby. And then the hospital is saying, oh, you need to be induced because your water's broke. And you're like, I know I want to see my baby more than you do, but let me do my thing because obviously, inductions can actually lengthen labor. They can stall labor as well. And, it increases the risk of interventions. And you did so well standing up for yourself. And, it was so good that you had your doula who really helped you to work through things, get the oxytocin flowing, get, as you said, you felt so comfortable in your home. It felt safe and great. And then obviously when you went to the hospital, as you said, it's a different environment. And I think that's pretty much, that's a common thing for women. Once they go to hospital, the environment's different. The zone, you can lose it, or, the as you said, your mindset. And that's, in as much as you try and recreate it, it's, as you said, it's not home. You just know it's not home. But wow.
That's right.
You did incredible. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. And look, I mean.
It was.
It sounds like his arrival into the world was traumatizing for you because he was whisked away. He didn't cry. You told that he was in distress, which all of that just sounds extremely traumatizing for a new mom. And I'm so glad that he was reunited with you within hours. That's amazing.
Yes, it was great. It was a good, and going there to the NICU and seeing all the little bubs that were really unwell. I, as much as I was sad for my own experience, I was grateful to see that he was, 3 kilos. He was a healthy size, and that, he was breathing on his own very quickly. So I knew that I was, one of the lucky ones.
Yeah. So how did you feel, in the, I guess, hours and days after he was born? How did you feel physically and mentally, actually?
Yeah. Physically, I mean, I was sore, of course. I thought I would be sorer. I thought I'd be on I thought I had to be on hardcore pain relief after giving birth because I was like, man, that was massive. And they were like, oh, Panadol and Nurofen should be fine. And I was like, oh, really? But it was. I brought my own Panadol and Nurofen. I didn't want to trouble any of the nurses or anything, so I just looked after myself. And it was fine. I was a bit sore where my episiotomy was. The stitches were uncomfortable. I had ridiculous hemorrhoids from the pushing.
Gosh.
And like the nurse came in to like check me, and she was like, oh my goodness, like that looks so painful. And I was like, wow. And I was like, you know, when the nurse is shocked by your hemorrhoids, like clearly they must be pretty bad. So yeah, that was delightful. And yeah, so that was a lot of discomfort in that sort of region. But, you know, apart from that, it was fine. You know, I was up and walking around, and I shared a room with a woman who'd had a cesarean, and she was in a lot of pain. So I felt lucky that and happy that I did get to have a vaginal delivery. And yeah, so that side of things were pretty okay. You know, my milk came in quite quickly. I did have some breastfeeding difficulties. Alex had a tongue tie, which he was getting plenty of milk, but it was very painful for me. So that was a bit tricky to navigate in the beginning. But the biggest shock to me was my pelvic floor. Straight after the birth, once they took the catheter out, I was totally incontinent, like urinary wise. I was wearing the disposable undies and pads and stuff for the bleeding predominantly, but I would just wake up or, you know, just get up, and I wouldn't have any urge to wee or anything like that. I had no sensation, and I would just wee wherever I was, and I just would have to try and rush to the toilet as fast as I could. And that was kind of really terrifying because I didn't know if that was going to be a permanent thing. I had never heard of that happening before. Like, I knew you get some leakage, but I didn't know that this could happen after birth. You could be totally incontinent. And yeah, that was very stressful. And that lasted a day or so. And then things settled down, and I had the, you know, yes, a bit of urge incontinence and a bit of stress incontinence, but you know, I had sensation back, and I could tell when I needed to go again. So yes, it was short-lived, but it was very confronting, and it's something that I like to share with people who are about to have their first baby, or even if they have had a baby before, because it's something I didn't know about, and it really took me by surprise. And to know that it doesn't mean it is forever. If that does happen to you, it can just be a result of the nerves being very stretched during the delivery, which I think it was in my case. And, you know, within a couple of days, everything kind of started to heal. And yeah, but I had a great postpartum, you know, mentally as well. I was pretty okay. About a week after birth, I probably experienced my baby blues, which is a lot longer than I thought. I thought I'd maybe escaped it. But yeah, I had a day of just total teariness. And you know, quite emotional and on edge. But overall, I felt well, and, you know, my body healed so quickly. My tummy went down so quick. I was so surprised at how quickly, you know, that happened for me. I was really, really happy. And breastfeeding, we got my little boy's tongue tie released, and then breastfeeding became a lot easier. I had no troubles with milk supply, and I felt great when I was breastfeeding. I'm still breastfeeding now at 16 months, and still haven't even got my period back, actually. 16 months postpartum. And overall, I've really enjoyed the postpartum experience. It was difficult. We didn't have any family because they were all interstate, and it was COVID and everything. But we go to a great church, and we had lots of wonderful friends and people from the church that I hadn't even met dropping meals around for us. So I didn't have to cook for 7 weeks after Alex's birth. Between all the meals that we got given, the meals I made on maternity leave. I was so cared for, and Joe had 7 weeks off work as well. So all I had to do was feed baby and try and get us to both sleep when I could. And I just, stayed plunked on the couch and let everyone else look after the rest. And it was lovely. It was a really lovely time. I thought the newborn stage was going to be hell. Everyone tells you it is. and I was preparing myself for the worst, and I actually enjoyed it much more than pregnancy.
Oh.
I found being a new mum to be so much better than being pregnant, and I loved it. I loved the newborn stage, and I'd do it again.
Oh.
Yeah, it was great.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so glad your postpartum experience was that good. Because as you said, there's a lot of talk about, you know, how horrendous and stressful and difficult it is, and it is the case for some women, but it's not the case for everyone. You know, some people like you get a really enjoyable experience, and you know, the fact that, for example, you had almost like a meal train, you know, you had just meals coming in, you know, delivered at your door. That probably helps too, because the less you know, chores, I guess, or the less tasks you've got to do, the more you can focus on baby Alexander, right? And you can just go, I don't need to cook, so I can just feed him, and I can just focus on my recovery as well, and get better, get stronger, and everything. That's amazing. How did Joe feel? Because he, you know, initially he was a bit, I guess, he was thrown in the deep end. As you said, he was, you know, maybe needed a little bit more time that he couldn't have. How did he feel once Alexander was here?
He actually took to fatherhood like a duck to water, and amazing. He was so surprised by himself. You know, when he was born, Alex was born, he was like, what did he say? It was so precious. Like, he said, I love him so much. I've never felt this way before. I could just cry with how much I love him. And my husband is not an emotional man. He does not cry. He doesn't like tears. And to see him, you know, in this total oxytocin high, it was really special. And he just loved him. He loves being a dad. He was great, really hands-on with nappies and bathing, and he surprised himself with how well he adjusted to it. You know, for the first couple of weeks it was a bit difficult. We were quite snappy with each other as we tried to work out the new dynamics and the lack of sleep, and he was very overwhelmed by my emotions, and I think being present for such a long labor, and he was amazing. He had a bit of compassion fatigue by the time the baby was born. He kind of needed someone to fill his cup a bit, and he didn't have much left to give to me. So that was a bit tricky. But you know, we worked it out, and and we both love being parents.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so glad, after everything you both went through for, you know, the labor, it was long, it was intense, it was difficult. It's so good that your postpartum went smoothly. You were able to focus on yourself and Alexander, and just, you know, and obviously, you know, Joe took to being a dad, like, surprised himself. That's amazing. That is so good. Oh, wow. That's amazing. Thank you so much for telling your story. I loved hearing every single detail. Thank you so much for everything you shared. I know you've shared quite deep and intimate details, and I'm really thankful that you did, because it will help other women to feel like they're not the only ones, and also that there is something that can be done about it. It doesn't have to be your reality as well. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. It's been lovely chatting with you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to get notified of when a new episode comes out, please subscribe to this show on your podcast listening platform. Also, I would really appreciate it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcast, or share this episode so that other moms can find it. If you would like to tell your own pregnancy, birth, or parenting story, please head to the show notes and you will find a form there to get in touch with me. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I will be with you again next week for a new episode.